Hello and welcome back to Bluebaggers Edge and the first edition of Talking Trades, as we're calling it, to discuss all of the relevant trade rumours and news that are being linked to the Baggers, of course. And first cab off the rank this time around is news around the incoming arrival of our new defender depth in the form of Nick Haynes. And it probably comes as no surprise given he will turn 33 in May next year, but Haynes will be signing a one-year deal. Now, as I said, this should come as no surprise. However, the club, as you might remember, stupidly gave Fantasia a two-year deal as a delisted free agent around this time last year. And this came off the back of adding an extra year to the deal to trump Port Adelaide, who had reportedly tabled a one-year deal to him. So we were, I guess, painted into a corner, and in order to try and lure him across, we added that extra year to the deal. Whilst the injury-prone Fantasia, he was kept to 4 games across the 2022 and 2023 seasons for Port, he managed to play 15 games for us in 2024. But, and I've spoken about this previously, but if you look closely at his time on ground stats, only 6 of those 15 games saw him play more than 70%, and across the season, he averaged just 62% time on ground across the entirety of the year. And it's fair to say, given our hard approach on delisting players who lacked fitness and, of course, questionable durability, if we didn't offer the 2 years to Fantasia, he'd be hard-pressed to be given another deal, I would have thought. But instead, we're forced to keep him. With Haynes, who also had questionable durability over his career, it's a much more sensible approach to only guarantee him the one-year deal. So if he does manage to play a majority of the season and provide, ample reinforcement in defence, only then should we think about extending it. So I will say, smart approach by the club. And it seems as though that we've learnt our lesson after what happened there with Fantasia. Now, the second bit of news surrounds none other than Dan Houston, with an update provided by Sam Edmund on SEN's Trade Radio this morning. And whilst the club hasn't officially spoken to Port Adelaide regarding discussions over a deal for Houston explicitly, reportedly, Houston's manager has been acting as a middleman regarding what Carlton could offer, and Port apparently have caught wind of the early intentions of packaging up Owies and a first rounder. Now, this first rounder would either come from another club or potentially Carlton's 2025 future first, with the 2024 first round pick of 11 off the table, which does please me. Now, these are the quotes that Sam provided in this article. He says, "The Power are just flatly refusing to deal with Carlton over this player. They are angry at what they perceive to be Carlton arrogance in the early negotiations here. They're not even talking directly at the moment. They're talking through Dan Houston's management. It's passing of messages on at the moment. Port Adelaide's prickly first impressions of Carlton this off-season stem from their proposition for the defender, which include the trading of out-of-contract small forward Matt Owies with their 2024 first-round pick 11 off limits at this stage." Well, there you go. So I guess Port's asking price early days has long been spoken about, being 2 first-round picks. And for a multiple All-Australian, it does make sense and ups his current trade value when talking, I guess, in terms of recency bias and what he has achieved in recent times. But honestly, it's just too much to give away for yet another half-back flanker. And I've tweeted about this over the recent days. And there have been other supporters out there as well which have echoed my thoughts. And I shake my head and think, has the club not learned that these type of players aren't the key to winning a flag? Like, we've already nabbed the likes of Sard and Williams. Both of those guys, they've played their respective roles across the journey that we've had them thus far. Probably more so Sard compared to the injury-prone Williams, but another halfback flanker doesn't fulfill a crucial need. Houston, as I've labelled him across the journey, he's a nice-to-have. He's not a must-have. And, in my eyes, a must-have is most definitely our need for another quality key position defender. And I think the club has dropped the ball in not getting in the ear early days like the Hawks did to lure across Barras. Josh Battle probably, less so. But Barras would have been perfect for us. But, speaking in those terms, I think a large reason for him crossing to the Hawks is money as being a big factor, which we wouldn't be able to offer. But aside from all that, it seems as though we need to be getting on the front foot a bit more, and getting in the ears of these guys that, whether it be 2 years out from their contracts expiring or a year out. It seems like the Hawks are on the front foot there, and full credit to them. As I said, money's a driving factor there, but By the same token, you need to be doing your homework and putting the feelers out there and trying to lure across these guys as early as you can. Because when they get out of contract, you want to be front of mind for them and their manager. But, in all honesty, if we, just talking about Houston again now, if we were to part with equivalent trade value of two first rounders, I would much prefer to do it for the likes of, say, a Sam DeConning. Obvious quality youngster. We know what he can achieve in defence at the Cats. But, even then, look at where trading multiple first rounders in succession landed, say, Collingwood, way back when they did just that for Dane Beams and Adam Treloar, and they kind of blocked themselves out of the draft in the first rounds following those successive trade periods. So, what I will say is it is quite shrewd of the club to try and loop in a third club, as, if what's being reported is true, and one classic scenario here is potentially Gold Coast playing a part, because their pick 12 will be swallowed up by rival bids on their academy kid, Leo Lombard, and will instead be seeking multiple selections and draft points to satisfy matching those rival bids. So, I think the Bulldogs might have done this last year with Gold Coast, where they needed to build up a bank of draft points and a whole array of draft selections in order to match these bids last year. So, I think if this avenue falls through for us, I will be supremely disappointed if a club even gives a second thought to handing up pick 11, let alone pick 11 and next year's first round to Port in return for Houston, especially given the top end of this year's draft is reportedly stacked. And, we can't compromise that. We really need to be conscious, I think, of the fact that this is one of the last remaining uncompromised drafts before Tassie come into the competition and leech all of the early first round talent. So, as much as it is important to trade for the now and build around the nucleus of the key players that we have, it's even more important to draft for the future when we have those picks up our sleeve, because we don't want to be left high and dry like, Collingwood were. And, we only need to look back at when Gold Coast and the Giants came into the competition, and the sides there that finished closer to the bottom, they struggled a fair bit in terms of trying to get top-end talent into their team, because they were all going to Gold Coast and the Giants. So we might chat about that as this develops, but yeah, it's good to see that the club is thinking outside the box, because that's something that I was thinking about when I think Brisbane's another team as well, who they've got father-son, obviously, another Ashcroft coming through, and another one or two academy players as well that they have to match bids for. So we could potentially look at Brisbane if we don't look at Gold Coast in this scenario. So we'll see how things transpire closer to the trade period kicking off. A bit of a segue as well into news on Owies as well, who, as we know in recent times, has met with the likes of Brisbane, West Coast and Gold Coast. And now we actually have a new interested party in the form of Melbourne, who, of course, will be losing Alex Neil-Bullen, one of their own smalls, to the Crows, and will be looking for a replacement. So, as reported by Josh Gablich on afl.com.au, he says Carlton is understood to be open to offering the former basketballer in Owies a contract for next year at the end of the trade period. So it sure looks like Owies will be, in some way, shape or form, a key piece to what will transpire across the trade period for the club, as we just spoke about with regards to Houston potentially being bundled up there in a package deal. But I spoke about this previously in the video where I was speaking about Keno, Owies, and to a lesser extent as well, Lewis Young. But I'm not a fan personally, given our lack of quality depth behind Owies, given we'd have to rely upon Motlop and Dirt and taking that next step, and the lack of reliable durability behind Owies in the form of Zach Williams. We can't put all the eggs in the one basket here, or split them even across Williams and Motlop, because it'd be different if Motlop had already taken that next step in 2024 and looked as though he was going to be a reliable small forward, but the jury's still out. Those question marks are still bigger than ever. Before you even factor in, the output from Owies and the fact that he kicked 33 goals which puts him among the likes of Willie Rioli, Papley, in the regular season side of things. So, I just think that Owies offers more to us than anything we could, potentially get at the trade table, which I think would probably be lowest, would be, around about the early pick 30s, which just isn't enough, really. It's not going to do much for us to try and work it out of the deals. But, perhaps I'll chat about this, another time in another video. But I will say that, having said all that, however, if and only if, Owies can help us get a Houston packaged up with next year's first rounder, as spoken of earlier, that is really, I think, the only scenario where I would be willing to part with him and then take that, I guess, calculated risk on putting all of our eggs into the one basket of Zach Williams, or, splitting it with Zach Williams and Motlop or Durden. Lastly, as well, rounding things out, the last bit of news reported by Riley Beveridge on afl.com.au. He's reported the Blues are expected to retain midfielder Matt Kennedy despite him exploring opportunities elsewhere. Again, speaking to this, I'm not too keen to lose Keno, given his ability to play in a variety of roles as a utility, which I think elevates his worth above just being, another. A lot of people speak about him just being another slow inside mid. He's not. He played in a variety of roles, as we saw in 2024, up forward, in defence, even in the ruck at various stages as well. So I think he offers a little bit more to our team than what meets the eye. But, of course, a lot has to play out. But unlike Owies, Kennedy is under contract, of course, so it does make sense that he is spoken about as potentially being more likely to stay at the club compared to Matt Owies. Well, that's it for the first installment of Talking Trades. Let us know, as always, your thoughts down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to help our channel grow. And we do thank you in advance. But with that, we'll catch you in the next one. Go Baggers.